And we were talking about world politics as well. So with China, then, are you saying that the Chinese are co-opting, or is it the other way around? The Catholics are co-opting the Chinese?
I think each think they're doing it to the other, but the reality is, if you follow the money, the Vatican holds the financial power. And speaking of that, remember when J.D. Vance went to Rome?
Yeah.
One of our sources in Washington said it was to take a bribe to put Timothy Dolan in as Pope. Bribe not just financially, but, which is funny, it's kind of hard to bribe the biggest financial power in the world, but it wasn't that kind of bribe. It was giving concessions to the Catholic Church in America, along the lines of what I was saying previously. And yeah, so I mean, I think it's that. Repeat your question. Sorry, I got off on this tangent.
Yeah, we were asking about the co-opting of the Vatican by China and vice versa.
Right. So it's the financial pull of the Vatican is one source of power, but the fact that the world's population and economic engine is now in the East gives China the authority. It's why it's going to be the superpower within less than 30 years, militarily and every other way. I think Trump's on board with that. I think that's one of the reasons he's deliberately gutting the country and feeding the conflict, because it's the best way to dissolve America in the face of China's buying up of it. So I think you have a convergence of interests, and so they're in the final analysis, they're all on the same team, but how they go about it is different. You got to maintain the appearance with your own group, your own flock, so as not to alienate them too much. So it's done in stages, right? It's like the frog boiling in the water gradually, right?
So IHS on Pope Leo's robes when he was presented to the world, do we know what that means?
IHS? Yeah, it's Latin. It means, well, there's different ideas of what it means. In seminary, I was taught it means, it's Latin for Jesus, Savior, and something. I can't remember. It's supposed to be a Latin designation. But don't forget, a lot of those Latin designations are from the Roman Empire. And like there's a thing that looks like a P with kind of an X through it. Laburnum, it's called. It was a military symbol from the Roman cavalry. All of these military symbols and everything went right into the Vatican. That's why I say it's a continuance of the Roman Empire, literally, in every way, including how people see the Pope.
Yeah, I'm looking. They say there's an estimate of the Vatican's global wealth could reach $265 billion US. Do you think that's accurate, or is that underestimate?
That's a pittance, because don't forget, calculate about 3/4 of the world's bank deposits go into the Vatican Bank or its partner, the Bank of International Settlements in Geneva. And a lot of the offshore accounts and everything, the financial concordats, where a certain percentage of tax money from over 100 countries is channeled right into the Vatican Bank without taxpayers or politicians even knowing it or colluding quietly. All the collection money brought in, all their corporate investments, it's in the trillions, but of course they've got to keep fiddling the figures. It's like in Canada, when the government keeps changing the figures about how many children died in the rescue schools, when it was over 50%. Some days they'll say it was 3%, some days they'll say it was 5%, maybe even a bit more. It depends, you rewrite history every 5 minutes, like George Orwell says, to keep everybody confused, right?
Yeah, because the last estimate of Chinese GDP is $18 trillion US in 2023. We've got US at 27 trillion, but China is expected to overtake America, isn't it, in the coming years?
I think, well, it already has in terms of like GDP and things like that. America's where Britain was after World War II. It's rapidly going down the toilet, and China's where America was. It's the rising power. But yeah, it's how can the Vatican not be bloated with wealth, considering its situation, right?
Indeed. James wants to know, what is the best book to buy by Kevin, which focuses on Catholic corruption?
Well, of course, this is the most recent one. It goes into all the hard facts. But all throughout my other works, I continually refer to this stuff. If you go to murderbydecree.com, that's my book, which is also on Amazon, Murder by Decree, The Crime of Genocide in Canada. We had to put it online because it kept disappearing from libraries all the time, destroyed. But in that Murder by Decree, you have concrete evidence of how the Catholic Church operated in Canada to commit genocide, to do all these other crimes against children. And then you can get a lot of hard details. But start with that for sure. And like I say, contact me at that email and on the site Sean has posted. And I can feed you a lot more information on the ground of things we're learning all the time.
So that book there that you've got, Dethroning, is there a summary on the back of the cover that you could read to us?
The Vatican Incorporated and the Church of Rome is a criminally convicted corporation that has killed more people than any institution in human history. Yet it is treated as a legitimate nation and offers the protection of the law and diplomacy in many countries and at the United Nations, despite its disqualification as a bona fide or lawful power. This book makes the argument for denying the Vatican any presence or membership of the United Nations, backed with the hard evidence of its crimes and illegitimacy. And like, to give you an example, a transnational criminal organization is a criminal body of 3 or more people that traffics human beings, launders money for crime, traffics in arms, and migrant workers. If you do any of those things, well, the Vatican does at least 3 and probably 4 of them. So under law, it's a TNCO. It's a transnational criminal body. Doesn't have the right to operate. And as citizens, you're not only allowed to, but you're expected to not cooperate with that, i.e. not give them money, and seize their property and wealth as reparations. You see, any money you give to the Catholic Church is funding a criminal body. And so you're committing a crime against humanity by doing that. So are all the governments. The point is, when everybody's in bed with the criminal, you look like there's something wrong with you when you say no, right? And you become the problem, as I experienced personally, and so do a lot of other people on the ground who take on this thing. So we have to know your enemy, otherwise you can't fight it. Otherwise you're in its bailiwick, and there's no way to stop any of these things.
So Kevin, with the previous Pope pretending he was for peace and saying people shouldn't invest in, arms manufacturers, etc., how does that compare to the present Pope? Is he going down that PR route as well, or does he not give a hoot?
Oh, he'll have to go down the same PR route because it's a blatant lie. That's why I know, when you talk about, are they Satanists? How is Satan described in the Bible? The father of lies. Every time these guys open their mouth, they lie. They have to, because the Vatican is one of the biggest arms dealers. When you look at its investments, it owns the biggest small arms company in the world, Beretta Limited. It's for missile systems, guidance systems. They're heavily invested at every level. And Bergoglio could make that statement because everybody knows that it didn't mean anything in practice, because the Pope's just a figurehead. The College of Cardinals isn't going to come on and say that shit, but their guy, their figurehead, the hand puppet, can say that without any consequence. The present guy will do, if anything, he'll make even more ludicrous remarks, because you see, he has to follow what I believe is the agenda, and that's bring America into the Chinese camp. And, so I mean, that's the big purpose. But again, there's all the other things that the Bishop of Rome was expected to do to keep their investments going, right?
Paul wants to know whether the Vatican is invested in gene editing and big pharma.
Yes, in a big way. It's one of its chief investment portfolios involves big pharma. Not only the genetic GMO stuff and all that, but they were in the forefront of testing drugs. When people talk about the COVID drugs and the nanoparticle stuff and the bioweaponry, that was pioneered by, to give you an example that we know best, in the Indian hospitals in Canada as early as the 1950s. Expatriate Nazi scientists, and sponsored by the Vatican, brought out through the rat lines the future Pope Paul VI was the guy who arranged the ravelines and brought the Nazi scientists into North America and South America. You know, they're in the forefront of developing a lot of those drugs. So, I mean, you know, they're almost synonymous with big pharma when you look at where their money goes.